It's such an interesting rabbit hole.
It really is. It's fascinating because we have seen it since, I mean, we weren't alive, but we've seen it since the 70s, 60s,
Mm-hmm.
50s even. Probably like mid 50s.
Before that.
Before that even, right?
Yeah. You might be wondering what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very interesting, dedicated episode. I wouldn't say this is a passion of mine. I'm just very curious about learning about this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and have been over the course of I'd say 5 to 7 years.
Yeah. From my end, I think it's been something that you hear about in high school and throughout school, and you hear about other parents doing it in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and you hear about all kinds of stories, and you're not sure what to take from it.
Yeah.
Negative connotations, maybe, but
If you are wondering,
yeah,
we're talking about psychedelics today.
we are. Some of those are your typical mushrooms and LSD.
Yeah, there's a long
lot.
list, but if I were to just jog my own memory, you have psilocybin, which is the active component to quote unquote magic mushrooms.
Mhm.
You have LSD, you have peyote. Mescaline is the active form of peyote, which comes from a cactus. You have DMT, which is a very interesting molecule because you find it in basically every living thing.
Mhm.
Like even out the grass, the plants, the trees, they have there's actually an argument that the human body produces DMT as well.
Really?
Dreaming, if you think about dreams,
Yeah.
I think they've done some research and found that it's produced within human lungs, the brain, pineal gland, that kind of stuff. It's a long list, but
Fascinating.
it's very fascinating. Go on.
Yeah, we're dealing with two fascinating things, which is the human body,
Yeah.
and psychedelics.
Yeah.
So when the two are combined, formulates this whole episode.
Mhm, basically. I do have to mention a disclaimer though.
Yeah.
I do have to say that these are very powerful substances. We're not advocating that you take them.
No, not at all. Yeah, that's something I spoke to Zayd about too. I was just like right before the episode. But I was like, I think it's perceived as bad. We don't know, but publicly, it's kind of like, it's a psychedelic. We are told don't do acid, don't do trips. But again, studies are showing, and there are arguments showing that, people are benefiting out of these things.
Mm-hmm. And I think this episode is it's going in the same direction as our birth control episode because I have my own personal opinions. You have your own personal opinions.
Mm-hmm.
We're not telling you to do any of this stuff. We're just laying out some very interesting information that is backed by a lot of science.
Yeah. And overall, we're here to discuss it, me and you.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I mentioned, the disclaimer, these are very powerful psychoactive tools, as I like to say.
Yeah.
You can mess yourself up severely if you take it in the wrong way and in the wrong situation, which a lot of people, arguably most people, do. So keep that in mind. This is not something to mess around with, especially if you have a family history of mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. You do not want to be messing around with this stuff.
Absolutely not.
But I guess before we get into it, is there something you wanted to bring up? Because I know you have a lot of questions about this topic.
I mean, honestly, look, when it comes to psychedelics, the only thing my train of thought just kind of shifts into the only things I know about it, which are high school things, just really dumb. Hey, don't do drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Stay away from it. We know why at this point. It's kind of it's a substance. And it's something that you can either build a bad habit out of, or it's something that could be doing something detrimental to your body.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the chemistry of it, why it's bad, why it was ever bad if it's not,
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. Is too much of it bad? I'm not sure. But all I know is that it's a psyche type of thing. Okay, so it kind of, I've heard people's stories, I'm spiritually connected now. I'm a lot more chill. I'm open to more people.
Mm-hmm.
I love community. And, that's kind of I see that side, or I see people kind of just disappearing. And if they're disappearing, I don't know if that's good or bad, but.
Yeah. There's a lot to it, as we'll discuss later on in the episode. But the whole DARE program, just say no. The egg frying in the pan.
Yeah.
This is your brain on drugs.
Yeah.
A lot of that is propaganda, and I think a lot of people can see past that.
Mhm.
But, just as many people agree with me or agree with our stance on that, there's also a lot of people who just don't know and just believe that psychedelics in general are just bad,
Mhm.
which is a very, shady notion. It's just not true.
Yeah. It's funny because I can look at this in many ways, right? Like, let's just take a mushroom. Where does the mushroom come from?
Earth.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I get that holistic, like, natural view
Mhm.
of, it was provided to us. But it just doesn't make sense because poison ivy is still a thing, right? Just because it's provided to me doesn't mean I'm going to go touch it,
Yeah. A lot
So
of
I have-
poisonous mushrooms
yeah.
as well.
So there's walls on everything that I'm going to try to think about here today, I
Mhm.
feel. And I don't know how I'm going to walk away, but I'm down to get into it.
Well, here's something interesting. Do you have like one belief against it? Because I'd be very curious to hear that.
Belief against it? Well, religiously speaking, I'm not supposed to be doing any intoxicants,
Sure.
right? So what is an intoxicant? I believe that it's something that you kind of something that messes with you and messes with your own control. So
Mhm.
therefore causing you to do things that are out of your control.
Alcohol
What
being
is
the
that?
best example.
Alcohol is the best example. So Islamically speaking, we're not allowed to have alcohol.
Yeah.
Specifically, right? And other intoxicants. What are other intoxicants? Well, time goes on and we live in modern day. So interpretations really shift. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We
A
hear
lot.
people saying like, CBD is fine. Some people say CBD is not okay. It's still like follows the guidelines of THC. Well, is THC bad? We don't know. So it's like, it's all over the place.
Mhm. This is from a religious context.
This is from a
Okay.
religious context, right? So I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to look at it. All right, let's just look at this and dissect it as Earth. Okay.
Yeah.
Things are on it. Things are happening. Things exist. We are in a modern day and time. I'm pretty sure just as much as they regulated weed and
Mhm.
regulated marijuana and all that, they can actually, I guess, suppress percentages now. So it's not overboard. It's
Sure.
not really, it's regulated.
Intelligent
Yeah, it's
regulation. Yeah.
intelligent. I'm pretty sure, drugs, no matter what it is, the standard's gonna raise, and there's different qualities, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
From the shows we've seen and everything. It just makes sense, right?
Mhm.
There's high quality Coke. And there's
No, you're right.
bad Coke,
You're right.
But yeah, I'm kind of just excited to
For sure.
be in it.
Yeah, the whole religious perspective is very interesting. And I do have some things to mention on
Yeah.
that later. But
Again, like religion in my eyes is just to perfect the human.
Mhm.
Right? It's to make sure he's walking in a straight, good, like path with others, right?
Yeah.
So that other people can rely on him and he can rely on others, and
Mhm.
everyone's exchanging the exact amount. Everyone's balanced.
And I don't follow a particular religion.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to change people's religions or how they operate within the world. I want to shift the narrative on psychedelics, though.
Exactly. Well, the thing is like whether you like it or not, you live here. Okay. And just because you're religious, you got to realize a lot of people are not, and they don't care for that. So if we still live with each other, it needs to be livable. So why not learn more about the things that other people use or other
Exactly.
people may use, or just to know more, because we are here to self-educate.
Bingo. But this entire thing revolves around a practice called psychedelic therapy.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you wondering what psychedelic therapy is, it's a technique that involves the use of psychedelic substances to aid the therapeutic process. So usually you'll see, I'll give an example. Right now we're doing studies on MDMA,
Mhm.
which is otherwise known as ecstasy. Although it's not exactly a psychedelic, it's not classified as one. It's more related to methamphetamine with a different type of chemistry. They're doing that in combination with psychotherapy.
Mhm.
So highly regulated therapists who understand psychology and understand certain mental issues such as PTSD,
Mhm.
which is a big one. Just as an example, they're doing work with veterans who suffer from PTSD. and the results are pretty damn staggering. So that's just a little bit of a taste of what's to come in the episode. But
interesting.
If we're looking at the ancient, like cultural perspective, these substances have been used all across the world ever since the dawn of our species. And I'll just rattle off a few. So in ancient Egypt, they believed psilocybin mushrooms could make you immortal and were a gift from the god Osiris. In ancient Greece, they had a famous psychoactive drink called kykeon, and that was used by high priests in rituals and also used by peasants. That's what they called them, peasants. They'd basically have these like huge ceremonial gatherings where everybody takes that drink. And I'm pretty sure it was a form of LSD from ergot, which is a fungus that grows on a specific type of wheat or something like that.
Gotcha.
In India, another powerful drink called soma was used in religious festivals and ceremonies. They believed it could impart wisdom and immortality to those who used it. Before the dawn of Christianity in Europe, mind-altering plants and fungi played a big part in pagan rituals. Many believe that, this is actually a very interesting point of view, but many believe that Santa Claus, as we refer him to now, was an ancient shaman who used plants and fungi to speak to communicate with people in the spirit world.
Really?
I shit you not. There's a lot of like parallels with Christianity and like Santa Claus and Christmas. Like, have you ever seen the red and white mushroom? The one from like Mario?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a specific type of mushroom that actually has psychoactive properties.
Ah.
So it finds itself in like culture.
Yeah.
And everything down to like the Christmas tree, how we create the Christmas tree, the ornaments that we put onto it. Dude, it's wild. It's really wild. Another one, peyote, psychoactive cactus that's been used by Native Americans, ancient people for thousands of years. You go down the list. Mayans, ancient people from Iceland. Almost every ancient culture has some form of psychoactive use.
Indian, probably. Yeah.
So just from a cultural perspective, we've been using this for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of years.
I think of herbs and spices when I think of psychedelics.
I think of cardamom and black pepper.
I don't know why.
Why?
It just reminds me of it. Like just, a bunch of herbs and we're just like, yes, we're about to escape today.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. Career shift.
Career shift. Yeah. Mental shift.
Yeah.
It depends on what we're talking about, but in this episode, it's only psychedelics, although there are a lot of different herbs and spices and fungi that we've used to also change.
I think it's because I look at it as a more natural like thing. And when I say natural, I mean specifically mushrooms is kind of like my focus when I think of psychedelics.
Yeah. Why? It's just the one that pops out immediately?
It's just the one that pops up because it's amazing to me. It grows. It just grows. And then somehow you're supposed to stay away from it. According to the government, of course.
According to the government, yes.
Yeah. So do you see how, as a curious human being, you would want to know, am I allowed to touch this? Am I allowed to have this? What's going to happen to me? It's crazy. It's a crazy thought. Because as far as we know, if you're into the propaganda or you're like a slave to that and you're easily manipulated, you're going to immediately think, no, that's bad.
Yeah, typical NPC.
Yeah. Like for me, it's not the cigarette that's going to kill you. It's the habit of it.
Yeah.
You get me? So who am I to know? I don't know. I haven't tried it.
Well, I'm going to tell you the shit that I'm going to explain today lays it out step by step by step on how exactly we went from ancient cultures using it for hundreds of thousands of years to complete like prohibition.
Sick.
So yeah, any other questions before we get into
No, that's it. I'm ready. 100% ready.
So we start with a very interesting chemist named Albert Hoffman. Okay. He used to work for the Sandoz company in Switzerland. I believe it was a pharmaceutical company. Don't quote me on that though. Hoffman had originally synthesized LSD in his lab as a medical stimulant for the respiratory and circulatory system in 1938. But at the time, he didn't know what he stumbled upon. He didn't know what he synthesized, right? Shortly after, about 5 years after he had done that, he had like this very specific epiphany when it came to this certain molecule. So he revisited it in 1943. He actually caught a glimpse of its effects because it actually absorbs through the skin, which is something you have to be very careful about. And he described the experience as dreamlike and not unpleasant, intoxicated-like condition.
Interesting choice of words.
Yeah. So intrigued, 3 days later, on a day that would go down in history as Bicycle Day, he did what any responsible scientist would do and experiment on himself. Taking a dose of 250 micrograms. So keep in mind, LSD is extremely potent. It's active in the microgram range.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So 250.
250 micrograms in his lab.
Imagine that.
Thinking it was an appropriate threshold dose, which we know now that he overdid it.
Yes.
Because 200 micrograms is the standard. Hoffman turned on, tuned in, and dropped out for the first time. So it's like a cute saying that came out of the hippie revolution. Within an hour, his perception began to ebb and flow rapidly, and he began to freak out, convinced that his neighbor was a witch and that he was going to go insane. Hoffman wanted to go home. Unfortunately, he didn't have a car to do so because of wartime restrictions. This was during the war. So he ended up having to make the journey home on bicycle. Okay. The trip was a stressful one. His vision wavered and he felt as if he were motionless. But as soon as he reached his condition's climax, he came back from a weird, unfamiliar world to reassuring everyday reality. In his notes, he went on to describe the hallucinogenic trip that would go on to inspire a countercultural revolution, and decades later, a generation of scientists looking to harness LSD for therapeutic uses. This is what he described from his notes based off of that trip. Now, little by little, I could begin to enjoy the unprecedented colors and plays of shapes that persisted behind my closed eyes. Kaleidoscopic, fantastic images surged in on me, alternating, variegated, I don't know what that fucking word is, opening and then closing themselves in circles and spirals, exploding in colored fountains, rearranging and hybridizing themselves in constant flux.
Very detailed.
So that essentially was the beginning of the psychedelic renaissance. When Hoffman synthesized LSD, had that experience, wrote that down in his notes, that was the beginning of it all. Any questions? Any points you want to make?
Not really. It's kind of like an observing moment right now.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go on.
Yeah.
After this point, Sandoz Laboratory started making the drug available for research, and expectations grew that LSD could have psychotherapeutic potential for patients. They had no idea what it was good for, so they did something interesting. They organized a crowdsourced research project where they offered LSD to any researcher or scientist or therapist who wants it for free. So they just gave the shit out like candy. From that point, it was touted as a wonder drug. Between the 1950s and 60s alone, more than 2,000 research papers were written about LSD.
Wow.
Not just LSD, psilocybin, other psychedelics as well. More than 40,000 people were given the drug in research groups. And this led to huge discoveries in context to treating alcoholism, depression, and other mental health issues.
More than 40,000 people?
Oh, dude, a fuck ton of people.
Oh my God. And it was all free?
Yeah.
Bro.
It was at...
Yeah, so this is part of a research group.
Not like a strict research group, a bunch of research groups.
Like at this very moment, I'm just picturing the 50s. But yes, go on, because this is a very observing type of moment.
Yeah. It was to the point where even the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous experimented with it and found it to be more effective than the 12-step program he helped to create. You know, AA 12-step program.
Yeah.
Very famous for alcoholics these days. Furthermore, churches got behind it because they found that it could inspire and enhance religious experiences. So
growing connection in a sense.
Yeah. So as you can see it being laid out, we find LSD through Albert Hoffman. A lot of the pharmaceutical companies, the world in general, the scientific world, finds this very fascinating. So they begin to do a lot of research, given out to a lot of people for free. And they can see the signpost of how it's like going to treat certain conditions, a lot more conditions than people would like to believe.
Sure.
And yeah, this is where it makes its way into culture.
Before the 50s.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Silence.
So it was never always bad. Now you see kind of like where it originates from and how it became LSD. It was an accident.
It was an accident until he had this like weird premonition that there was something special about this molecule.
Yeah, because he had it. And once you have a dose, apparently now, you get a feeling.
You get more than a feeling, yeah.
Yeah. I think once the body knows how to make a connection between that and the mind, and it somehow just stores it, he must have made a connection. So he's like, yeah, there's something in this. This is not.
There's potential to it.
Yeah, this is not normal.
For sure. Now we get into what I call the dark side of the psychedelic renaissance. So this is when the government stepped in and a lot of the bad shit started to go down. Eventually, after Albert Hoffman's discovery of LSD, the CIA caught wind of this. They found it a very interesting molecule. They wanted to see what it was capable of within the government / let's say, war context. So they were concerned because the Soviets had actually purchased 50 million doses from Sandoz Laboratory. And the reason why this was a concern for the CIA is because they didn't want the Soviets to weaponize LSD. Because they had no idea what its potential was, right?
Exactly.
So then the CIA the US government turned to seeing how they could weaponize it as like a 4D chess type of move. And interesting enough, they ran a bunch of like, for lack of a better word, horrifying experiments on the American people. Tests were done to see if LSD could work as a truth serum to bring out truth from people on the other side. Experiments were done to see if it could make Soviet spies defect, completely step away from the Soviets and go to the other side, the Americans.
Yeah.
Or if spraying it on troops could work as a weapon of mass distraction.
Oh my God. Wait, yes. But look, well, not yes, like do it, but like.
Yes, do it.
But I can see how, like, if I was trying to destroy something, how this could destroy a mass.
Oh, yeah.
Quickly, you know? Well, not destroy, but like, yes, in a sense of war, it'll distract, which is good because you'll destroy them.
It's a psychological advantage.
Yeah. So you could see it that way.
It's really fucked up to put it in these terms, but if I were to drive somebody kind of crazy, I would give somebody a good dose of acid without them knowing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that's basically what the government's perspective was like back then.
What if the government is spraying something in the air today? No, I'm kidding. They're not. But
that's for another
psychedelic episode.
It was even given without consent to mentally ill patients, prisoners, prostitutes, and drug addicts. They even used it to torture people for information and threatened that the trip would last forever. Because these people don't know what acid is. No. They've never experienced it. So just imagine how horrified you'd be if you were given this by the CIA and told that it could potentially last forever if you don't give us the information that we want.
Yeah, you're right.
Dude,
yeah, because, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't stop saying yeah, because there's nothing, any angle I think about it from, it's so messed up.
And then also the name for these experiments, I think, or the broader term that would classify them was Project MK Ultra. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
All about mind control, that kind of stuff. So everything I described beforehand, that was Project MK Ultra.
Okay. Yes, I do remember that. We've mentioned it in a previous episode. Yeah.
So the question is, how did we get to prohibition? Right? It all started with, actually, the vice president of JP Morgan.
Really?
Yeah. Gordon Wasson was his name. In 1955, him and his family went to Mexico, to partake in a psilocybin mushroom ceremony. And he wrote about it in a positive way. He wrote about the experience very positively in the 1957 issue of Time magazine.
With his kids, or just
I'm not sure his kids, but his family.
I feel like that would be so typical back then. But
but in 1957 in Time magazine, the biggest magazine ever, arguably, the article went viral, and it became a catalyst for becoming mainstream. From the moment that article went live, the war against the psychedelic renaissance began, which eventually led to the government making them illegal because of the 1960 hippie counterculture, which went against everything that the government wanted, right? So I think a good example is like, let's say Vietnam War is taking place. A lot of young men are being shipped over to the war, right? A lot of those guys took acid at the time, and they started having these ideas like, why are we fighting? What's the point of going into this war?
Yeah.
I'm just going to die, like needlessly.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, the government took that as a threat, therefore deciding to penalize anybody who would engage in any psychedelic form of activity.
Yeah, even though they were technically laced with it in World War II, right?
What do you mean?
Weren't they given forms of psychedelics?
No, not in World War II. That was, I think you're thinking of like...
Or was that the Vietnam War? Pretty sure that was the Vietnam War.
The Vietnam War, the soldiers took it on their own time.
On their own time?
Yeah.
I thought they were already addicted to it because they were getting fed it.
No. They took it on their own time to escape from the war.
Gotcha. That's what it is.
And then as a result, not many people want to support it.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where like the hippie counterculture comes in, right?
Mm-hmm. It forms, yeah.
Yeah.
Moves on to the 70s.
So we go prohibition, now we're getting into the war on drugs. In 1966, LSD is banned. A few years later, so was psilocybin, magic mushrooms for those of you who don't know. And then that's when psychedelics were made as an illegal Schedule I substance, which is the highest of the highest. Your ass is getting sent to jail for life.
Yeah.
Like, not because it was scientifically proven to be dangerous, but because it was a threat to the government's power and made for a good political tool.
Gotcha.
This wild stuff,
so
man.
Think of cartel.
This is why once you start connecting all the dots, it's like, damn, that's how this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And this part is really, I think, the most nefarious fact. Okay. This is what John Ehrlichman, whatever the fuck his last name is, Richard Nixon's domestic policy advisor, had to say about the true intention behind the war on drugs. The Nixon campaign in 1968, the same year psilocybin was banned, they had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. Sounds terrible, but that was true. This is what they say. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black people, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with cannabis, marijuana, and psychedelics, and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt both of those communities through arresting them. So this is how they used it as a tool. Their main goals was to arrest their leaders, destroy the movement, raid their homes, break up meetings, and vilify them night after night after night on the evening news. This is the worst part here. Did we know that we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. That's what Richard Nixon's fucking domestic policy advisor had to say about it. It was a complete sham. It was just used to demonize certain groups of people that went against the government's agenda. Just
I have
speechless.
no words.
Yeah, literally.
That low-key pissed me off.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it in my face. But
also, like, an important thing to mention is that the scheduling of psychedelics just made absolutely no sense, because Schedule I drugs are classified as having the highest risk for abuse and psychological/physical dependence. However, most researchers agree that psychedelics are actually anti-addictive, meaning that their effects are weakened the more frequently you take them. They can be mentally addictive. Like, you can take it just to escape from the pain of your life.
Yeah.
But on a physiological standpoint, they're anti-addictive. because as you take more over time, you begin to experience less and less effects very quickly, actually. Meanwhile, drugs like cocaine and meth, which are way more addictive and destructive, aren't even on the scheduling list. So essentially, decades of research and work was wasted following this whole situation, leading to a generation of adults and doctors who believe that psychedelics are nothing but harmful.
Damn.
Yeah, bro. It's wild. It's wild.
Yeah, there's a long history with that. And
there's still more, by the way.
Yeah, I can see how everything is just falling into place.
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot believe that that's literally all he had to say about.
Yeah. Is there one specific subtopic that you'd like to cover before we get into the rest of the history? Because I don't just want to ramble on. Just like...
No, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know what to take from it at the moment, because it's just kind of like more, I think, emotional than it is logical.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you think about most people today, they have no idea what the history is like. Behind all of this and the reasoning why we've come to this point.
No, the only history we have is like the intro of Pineapple Express, where, they're just like giving the guy marijuana.
Yeah.
Making it illegal.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, like, come on.
That's the function of propaganda. That's how you get to a point where you convince an entire population that one thing specifically is bad when it's actually not. It's very nuanced. And it actually provides a lot of good, as we'll get into more of the research that...
Yeah. See, I do have a problem with the, just because something shouldn't be illegal doesn't mean it's good either. Like, I still don't believe it's good.
Sure.
You get me? And that's what I'm trying to get to right now. That's why I feel like this is a transition.
Yeah.
We went through the history. Now I want to see science.
Sure.
What does science say?
Sure. You want to dive into it?
I think I want to dive into science now. Yeah.
Okay. This is where the Renaissance picks back up. Okay. Starts in 1992. Dr. Rick Strassman begins to study DMT. That same year, the FDA actually passes the Prescription Drug User Fee Act to encourage research on new drugs. And this is one of those moments in history where it's like it can go either one way or the other. Because DMT as a molecule or as a drug was not very well known back then. So it made it through because of this FDA Act. And then Rick Strassman began to study a lot of the effects, which would pave the way for a whole bunch of other research based on other drugs as well. Let's see. So studies were basically approved for it more easily. In 1999, Johns Hopkins Hospital starts its own research through private funding, where then psychotherapy starts to gain traction in combination with the drugs. From there, the stigma begins to disappear. More research starts to get done. Now, if we fast forward today, there have actually been many major victories for the United States in terms of psychedelic research. One recently being the federal decriminalization of marijuana, which actually happened 2 weeks ago? Essentially the link.
Yeah. It was 2 weeks ago about.
So for those of you who don't know, there's always been marijuana has always been federally illegal, and they just completely removed that. So now it's back to what I think it should have been.
Yeah.
It's just open game, open season for regulation, so forth. Another victory being the legalization of psychedelic therapy in Oregon in combination with decriminalization. So decriminalization, if you get caught by the cops with a certain amount of a specific psychedelic substance, you don't go to jail. You might get a fine, but there's definitely 3 strikes, you're in jail for life type thing. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. I hate that so much.
What do you
mean? There's a whole different issue with that, but
yeah,
it's, you know what it is.
Keep that in mind. We'll discuss it.
Yeah.
Even Washington, D.C. and some other states have decriminalized many psychedelic substances. Like fucking Washington, D.C., like the hub of America, right? Of politics, at least.
Mhm.
And this is where we get into the science, as you requested. So I've compiled a few studies showing the power of certain psychedelic substances for very specific issues.
Mhm.
This one study here, and we'll include links in the description, and I'll also put pictures here.
Hell yeah.
This study shows that psilocybin, active compound in magic mushrooms, can help build new connections between brain cells. So it's responsible for neurogenesis.
And it's for
Like this is the headline: a single dose of psilocybin can remodel the brains of mice.
my God, that's it's regenerative. That blows my mind because
Or let's say it has regenerative
potential, yes.
studied in the right environment, done in the right way.
Yeah, and as we know, we do experiments on rats because they generally like it's the same amount of like signal,
Same
study,
genetics for the
same
most part.
genetics for the most part when it comes to looking into brain cell or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes it? But like, do you see that it's the psilocybin, which is the natural stuff
It's the active compound in the mushrooms.
in the mushroom?
Yeah.
So that's natural.
Yeah, of course.
Why is it like?
Why do you think ancient
I don't know.
cultures
I don't
have
know.
used it for hundreds of thousands of years? Like
Yeah,
ancient people were not fucking stupid. There's a reason why they use these substances.
yeah, it can help you. It can help you for sure. This is what I think. I truly believe at this very moment.
Yeah.
Okay, is that it can help you, but it doesn't mean it won't kill you.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about psilocybin,
Yeah.
it's one of the lowest it's how do I fucking say this? In terms of toxicity,
Yes.
it's one of the safest drugs out there.
Okay. But
Yes.
we're all different, man. You get me?
No, for
We're
sure.
all different.
But
I think everyone's body, no matter what, is going to react different to something.
I agree, but there's never been a case in history where psilocybin has ever
Yeah.
created a single human death.
Okay. So then I can get by this if it's regulated.
It's exactly like marijuana in
Yeah.
that regard.
Do you get me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's something is regulated and it's something someone is going to tell you, like, if you take this exact dosage from this brand because you are having trouble with this part of your life
Mm-hmm.
and it's natural, I don't see why I would shy away from it. You get me? Once it has additives, that's when I'm like, I'm out.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a big concern with pharmaceutical companies picking all of this
Yeah.
stuff up because they don't want to like.
So I generally like a psilocybin, I have a different view on than like methamphetamine and all that other crap. You know, the stuff that gets cooked.
Yeah.
I don't believe in it. I just don't.
Well, those are narcotics. That's
Yeah.
an entirely different class of drugs.
Yeah. Which is still a psychedelic. So does that mean
What is
what?
narcotics?
Yeah, aren't they?
No, they're not.
So methamphetamine is not a psychedelic.
No. It's a stimulant.
Okay.
Like if we're talking about
Yeah. So,
Adderall,
yeah, so
basically
now I'm
meth.
thinking of acid, LSD. I'm thinking of
Just think of
heroin.
psilocybin.
Yeah.
Heroin's no.
Okay.
Just think of psilocybin, LSD, peyote, ayahuasca, ibogaine, DMT, ketamine. Although ketamine is kind of interesting because it has some similarities between both. Think of those.
Okay.
Those are the main ones. But I've been very vocal about my own use, my own very strategic and healthy use of psychedelics. And just based off of this psilocybin study, I'll tell you, after the first time I did it, changed person for the most part.
So you see more benefit.
Like much more open-minded. And it's been shown that actually psilocybin is one of the few things to increase your personality trait of open-mindedness. One of the handful of things, because it's very hard to get people to change their open-mindedness stats.
Yeah. The thing I hear the most
Mm-hmm.
is that I am completely separated from my ego.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
There's a lot of pitfalls with that, but
So it's like, the way I see it, it's kind of like, sometimes I see it this way, right? It's like it's a bitch move to just reset. It's a reset button for a bitch guy. That's
I
what
can
it
see
is.
that. Yeah. A lot of people do use it that way. But it comes down to intention.
Yeah. So that's why I see it in a negative light too. You know, like, don't mistake me when I say, like, I have a very high school, like, not look, but I would say knowledge about it, right?
Yeah.
I don't have an opinion, but I'm forming one.
And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm telling people, listen, if you take this, your life is going to improve. Your personality is going to be much better.
Yeah. See, nothing
not how it works.
works like that. Nothing has ever worked like that.
I've seen a lot of people get worse because of it. So it depends on the intention, set and setting. Where are you? Who are you around? How much do you actually know about the substance you're taking?
I have never met anyone that has taken a substance of any sort, from nicotine to marijuana to everything, right? And everyone has wanted to quit sometime.
Yeah.
They say, I'm sick of it. I have anxiety. I'm pretty sure it's inducing something. It's da, 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 da,
Mhm.
da, 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 da. So we all go back to being sober, because that's the true reset.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. So it's like, I feel like substances are designed, right, to tell us, yes, you're going to feel amazing. But obviously, you're going to feel amazing if you do it once, twice, 3 times in your lifetime. Right?
Sure.
4 times. But the moment you start using daily, I think that's when it's going to start to distort reality. And that's when you're going to start hating yourself, or potentially hating yourself, or having excess thoughts that are going to just screw you over.
Yeah. I think that applies to most of the list when it comes to psychedelics. Although I will say there's a caveat for microdosing of LSD and psilocybin. If you do, I mean, there's a protocol where you do like every other day. I wouldn't suggest doing that every single week of your life, but that holds a lot of potential, especially when it comes to, like, if you want to get off smoking, if you want to get off alcohol, some other thing. It's a very useful tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, let's go to the next study.
What is the next study, my guy?
This is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
So this is, the title of the study is MDMA assisted therapy for severe PTSD. It's a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled phase 3 study. It doesn't get much better than that. It's
Top of the top. It's a creme de la creme of studies.
Let me just mention that MDMA has shown so much potential in combination with psychotherapy, thanks to a foundation called MAPS, amazing foundation, that the FDA has fast-tracked its progress. Because if they see that a certain drug has so much potential and very little side effects, if done correctly, they will speed up the process in terms of actually getting it onto a regulated market. So it goes through a few tests before phase 1, but it goes phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, I think phase 4. And then from there, it's granted full FDA permission.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. I did not know that there's like a 4-step process.
Yeah. And this study it's published in the Nature of Medicine. So it shows immense potential with people who have severe PTSD, especially soldiers, veterans,
Yeah. So
victims of sexual abuse.
Yeah, that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Because things like that, for the most part, as far as I know, you can't really reverse it. They either are strong enough to learn to live with it, with whatever strong part they have remaining of their brain, or they're just gone. So to see that it's actually making massive change.
Unbelievable change, dude.
There has to be some good in it.
Like, we're talking 6 months from that therapy, they don't have PTSD anymore.
See, this is when I agree with things. It's when it's used for medicine.
Yeah.
Right? So PTSD, that's something really harmful to someone. And if I care for someone, I would like them to be around, just because they saw something and now they have to live with it. You know? Knowing that there's a solution, that's huge.
Yeah. It's amazing, dude.
Yeah. And it's coming from the most natural thing I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Done correctly, of course.
Of course.
This next one, it's not necessarily, well, it's not like a full-blown study, but it's based off of research that has been done for a long time. Research finally proving that LSD is not addictive and does not cause organ damage.
Sweet.
This is from the We Are the Drug Policy Alliance. So
Yeah. So it actually does not disrupt any digestion, gut issues. Like,
no,
yeah.
no. A lot of people have said that it creates holes in your brain. You know, it's one of the propaganda.
Creates holes in your brain.
Yeah, it's one of the propaganda pieces that people throw out.
Yeah.
It's been proved to obviously not be true.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what's fucked up? The research, I think the original research that they created to come up with that conclusion, they tested it on mice. They said it was acid, but they actually gave them methamphetamine. I'm pretty sure that's how it went, based off of what I can remember.
Really?
There was a big mix-up to the point where the study should not even
have been published.
No,
whatsoever.
Should not have been published.
Ugh. Okay, that sounds a little confusing. A little sus too.
A little sus from some
a little
nerds.
sus from which direction? From which side? You know.
We know which side. The government, pharma companies, stuff like that.
Yeah. From what we've seen with even normal medicine, yes.
Yeah. Now is this okay? This is the last one I'm gonna mention, but it's an overarching explanation of how powerful psilocybin is for a wide range of conditions.
Okay.
So this is in PubMed Central. Can't speak today.
No one can.
The National Library of Medicine. The therapeutic potential of psilocybin. Okay. Let me zoom in here because this is a long list. We have alcohol dependence.
Okay.
These are all diseases or ailments that it shows immense potential for. Alcohol dependence, stimulant dependence, cocaine addiction, tobacco addiction, nicotine addiction, opioid addiction, cannabis dependency, anxiety orders such as PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, advanced stage cancer-related anxiety, psychological distress associated with existential crisis due to a terminal illness. You're dying of cancer.
Mhm.
You take psilocybin. You feel much better about yourself, and you're actually at peace with death.
Maybe you can at least manifest some positivity. Yeah.
Mhm. Adjustment disorder with anxiety, cancer-related depression, treatment-resistant depression, major depressive disorder, severe existential depression, suicidality, and cluster, quote-unquote, suicide headaches. It's a long list.
It's amazing.
It's a long list.
Yeah. I can see it. I can see how, from article to article, if I were to be reading about the positivity, it sounds all great. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
Once it becomes regulated, decriminalized on a federal level, then I think that it has an immense potential to really transform this country.
Yeah.
And I think this world.
Yeah. And I like to think about it like this. Everything is a drug. Okay? Everything's a drug.
Yeah.
And some of us are going to try things. Some of us are not. Some of us need these things. We just need to know the difference between what things we are able to use and get away with it for treatment versus something that is just a substance.
Yeah. Bingo.
That's it. You know? Because if we can extract something good out of marijuana or out of cocaine or out of mushrooms,
Sure.
right? All good.
Yeah.
You know, if it's helping someone, if it's helping someone with cancer, if it's helping someone with PTSD, something that we've been trying to solve for like 90 years at this point.
That's really the crux of the situation. A lot of people are not willing to change their minds until they start to see other people's stories about how it's completely transformed them.
Yeah.
From real illnesses that have taken millions of lives. Like, I'm not saying psilocybin will cure cancer. That's not what the research shows. It's showing that people who have a terminal cancer diagnosis, who are going to die from it, when they take a certain dose of psilocybin in a controlled manner, they report not being scared of death anymore, feeling happy, being grateful for having family around them during this time. And like, what better way would you want to die than that?
What do you guys think? Is it a substance or is it treatment? Are psychedelics a substance or a treatment?
But also,
I feel like that's a great question.
it is a great question. And I have one final little thing to mention
Sure.
before we head off. Industry is booming, and it has a very bright future. So there are some companies that are using psychedelics to treat a number of mental illnesses in combination with other methods.
I know one of them's on it.
What? No, they don't
They're
use
not.
psychedelics. No.
Imagine.
Bro, they're already on the market. It's like, no.
What's yeah.
So Field Trip Health, it's a Canadian company that runs high-end ketamine companies in the US.
Mhm.
There's actually quite a few of them in LA. MindMed, they use psychedelic psychotherapy and microdoses of LSD to help patients with a number of ailments. And then finally, Compass Pathways, a mental health facility investing $240 million into clinical trials of psilocybin across 10 different countries.
Wow.
So you're not going to stop this shit. People are starting to open their minds in a very healthy way. And regardless of what kind of beliefs you have to look at the data.
Yeah.
Look at the science.
Question. When people use things like lion's mane, for example, I know that does come from some sort of mushroom.
Yeah.
What's the
Lion's
deal
mane
with that?
mushroom.
What's the deal with that? It's not a psychedelic.
No, lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, chaga, turkey tail, those are all, they have very powerful therapeutic properties, but they're not classified as psychedelics.
Yeah. Because if you look at all the above, it just all enhances memory and focus and brain work.
Oh.
Yeah. Which is amazing. Same with like Ginkgo biloba.
Yeah.
Is it biloba? Biloba? Biloba. Yeah.
Balboa?
whatever. I don't know.
Ginkgo Newport, Balboa?
Yeah. Something like that. Peer.
Peer.
Well, I think that was a very fascinating topic.
Yeah. I hope I explained it well.
Yeah. Many questions to be answered. And I think a lot of questions to ask yourselves too.
What do you guys think about psychedelics?
Yeah.
Has this episode actually changed your mind?
Yeah. And, what do you take from this? At the end of the day, I believe it could be either substance or treatment. But I think if it's for, last resort treatment, I feel like it's totally fine. If something it comes from a natural place.
Yeah.
Whatever. If it's helping, it's helping.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah, stay tuned, guys, for the next episode. Thank you for joining once again. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google,
YouTube.
Amazon, YouTube,
Everything
you want, even TikTok and Instagram at the 2 a.m. podcast. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode, and go follow us at TikTok at the 2 a.m. podcast and Instagram at the 2 a.m. podcast and Twitter at 2 a.m. pod. And you will never miss an episode again. We will catch you guys next time.
Peace.